Yeah, here, we're fine. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Get in the Garage.
It's a music podcast.
For music lovers and
Haters. Today, I feel like it's going to be a mixed. It's going to be a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag today.
So, starting it off today, Jeff made a suggestion selection. It is the 25th anniversary, right, of the Third Eye Blind album. Or were we not talking about that one?
I mean, I listened to it.
Are we talking about that?
Oh,
I thought we were talking about Luke's albums.
I thought we were going to do like one half just to do quick.
I thought we were
going
to
to
do two segments.
Because you talk, I mean, you think very highly of this album, so I figured let's cut you loose, baby. Let's let you talk about the 3IB.
That was a joke suggestion.
Oh.
but I listened to it twice this week, so we can talk about it.
I mean, we can talk about it if you want.
Do you like this record?
I love this record.
All right, so why the joke suggestion then?
Because I assumed you guys would be like, Third Eye Blind, fuck Third Eye Blind. We're not talking about Third Eye Blind.
Well, let's talk about it because
let's get into the nitty gritty. Because on the low key, me and Mike.
Now I'm sweating. I'm happy. I'm
Mike,
not prepared. I'm not prepared at all.
oh, because it's jazz, baby.
Now me and Mike are prepared for a segment.
Oh, good.
For the first time
For the
ever.
first time.
I listened to it yesterday, so I'm prepared enough. I guess.
Yeah.
So-
I gave it a listen.
Me
I
and
gave
Mike.
it a brief. I didn't deep dive.
Yeah, so
it 'cause-
yesterday, April 8th, was the 25th anniversary of Third Eye Blind's self-titled debut, released April 8th, 1997, in the that prime of my youth.
Yeah.
I was 9 years old, or just about to be 9 years old. This was an ubiquitous radio rock album.
Yep.
Semi-Charmed Life, huge 90s hit. Jumper was a huge song. How's It Gonna Be was like kind of on the radio on
That's a big
pop
song.
rock radio.
That's a big song.
I hope it's a big song because it's one of my favorite 90s songs of all time.
How's it gonna be?
I can't explain to you how much I love that song and how much it makes me feel like I'm 9 years old again.
So this record.
Please,
Me and Michael.
Hit it.
This is I'm very
So-
caught off guard. That was a full joke suggestion.
So me and Michael are like,
Joke's on you.
I didn't see a thumbs up, so I assumed you guys got the
liked
joke.
it.
Oh, okay.
yeah, no, I was like, oh, okay. So I listened to this record,
Okay.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm conflicted because I'm like, Jeff says he likes this record, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, I fucking like it was rolling good, and then when I got to the second half of it, I'm like, this is a real dragger for me. Once there's no more hits, but then I was like, man, so I call Mike. I'm like, Mike, you like this fucking record? And Mike's like, I don't know, man. I don't really like this fucking record. We're like trying to figure it out, like what's the, and I'm like, we're talking. I'm like, I love the singles. The singles are great.
Yep.
And then I'm like, so then whatever. I'm like, I'm gonna listen to it a couple more times. So I listened to it 2 more times after that, and I listened to it in a reverse order, so backwards up.
Luke in the reverse orders, man.
And then I listened to it forwards down again.
Yep.
And I liked it way more on that listen. But
from front to back rather than back to front. You saying?
once I listened to it like down up, because then like you get like more familiar with like the things on the B side of the album, like in the end of the album, the album closer first is like more of a like reverse statement.
Yep.
And I liked it way better after that. But like I think the main thing here is like you were like, this was a big album for me in those years. Where like this one for like me and Mike, I was like, I'm like way more into that Goo Goo Dolls album, Dizzy Up the Girl, from around this time, right? Where you give me Scrunchy Face on that one, where I'm like, because I think I'm more familiar with it.
I don't mind the singles off that, but I like Stephen Jenkins' voice. I don't really like the Goo Goo Dolls guy's voice.
Well, because
It's like that raspy.
Yeah.
And this guy's more like Stephen Jenkins sounds like the SoCal douche that he is.
Yeah.
Like the way he does certain vowels and stuff, it's very Californian. It's,
California.
Yeah, it's like, all right, man, just don't harsh my vibe. Like that's what it sounds like. Yeah, I agree with you though. The album, like I would say the first it's 14 tracks. The first 9 for me are like perfect. Up through Good For You. And then London On is like the deep cuts for the real fans.
Yo,
Yeah.
that's how I
Yeah.
felt. I felt like London was like the weakest song on this record.
Yeah.
This is me. Obviously, I've never listened to this record again. Like this is another one, but yeah, like London for me felt weak. But like, I Want You was like a good
Yeah.
late in the album track. I really liked that one. It had a really catchy poppy chorus. And like God of Wine was the album
Yeah, the
closer.
closer.
That was a heavy ass song, man, and it
Yeah.
had a lot to do with like the album theme. Well, I don't think I was giving this album enough credit because I kind of thought it was one hit wonder, like radio rock. But a lot of the songs have a lot of like real lyrical content about like substance abuse and like there's Suicide, Jumper, all those kind of things. And I thought it was a consistent album. The songs were good. There wasn't a lot on it that was like I hate this. Maybe that song like London I didn't enjoy at all, but.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, my haterade was like, it was hard for me to sip the haterade the more I listened to it. So,
Yeah, I think the production on it is just so well done. That
Oh,
was the
yeah.
thing for me when I listened to this album. You know, I mean, that's the thing is like you can listen to records and maybe not necessarily connect to the songs themselves. But you know what we do, we try to capture the entire body of work, and something that you have to add in as a factor 100% is the production quality. And the production quality for this is great, man. Like all the levels sound great, all the guitars sound nice and crisp. And the hits are just hits. Like they're just great songs, you know what I mean? Like they kind of they sound so 90s that they're kind of undeniable, you know what I mean? I did find myself kind of wanting to listen to like Oasis after this. I did kind of find myself wanting to listen to. I did say spin. We talked Spin Doctors yesterday for a hot minute. I know Jeff's not a big Spin Doctors guy, but I got a pocket full of kryptonite. At all times,
I like the 3
so-
songs on that album.
Little Miss Can't Be Wrong.
Little Miss Can't Be Wrong, Jimmy Olsen's Blues
Yeah.
are both great songs.
Yeah.
2 Princes, it's okay. And then the rest of the album for me is like, ugh.
Yeah.
I own it. I did buy it for $1 at a Goodwill once.
I have it on cassette upstairs.
And I bought their second album for $1.
So who's
as
the
well,
idiot
The
then?
same day. Let me tell you think the first album was rough for me. The second album.
You're like another hour of this. What
Oh
the
my
fuck?
God.
It's like, oh, she can be wrong.
Yeah,
It's like,
she was wrong. She was wrong the whole
Thank
time.
you. Twice as much slap bass.
But yeah, I think it listening back to it, it definitely put me back in a time and like I wouldn't say that I listened to this album to give me this sort of, how could I put it? It wasn't really a time and place album for me in the way where I was like really into it at a certain time in my life, as much as it's just like, oh no, a couple of these songs, it was like the background music to my childhood. You know what I mean? So I wasn't heavy into Third Eye Blind, but definitely it sounds like, like I just watched an episode of Rugrats. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like that. It's that whole thing. Like
So this album, like you said, it kind of has like that backgroundy quality, and I feel like it does, but at the same time, the lyrical content of it is like what is like pushing it to like the level of like this album is really good, because like lyrically this album it's all heavy hitters, and like the subjects he's talking about are like, and it's well done and they're like thoughtful and hard to talk about. I wanted to super shout out the huge giant single on this record, Semi-Charmed Kind of Life, for having the most vulgar lyrics accepted on the radio since Aerosmith's Walk This Way.
I
It's
thought it was
so
going to say Aerosmith's Lord of Your Thighs.
Lord of Your Thighs
That wasn't good
was
enough to
not
be
a
on
big
radio.
single. Thank you.
It should have been.
Walk This Way is like one of the filthiest songs that gets played
Yeah,
on the radio
sure.
every day. This is also one of them.
Yeah.
I'd like to if we have a
Please,
favorite gross line on the
quote,
song,
yeah.
"Coming Up Your Back," it was one of the nastiest lines that I picked out in the song.
She comes around and she goes down on me.
Yep.
I didn't have one prepared. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think.
Little red panties, they pass a test, slide up around your belly, face down on the mattress.
Yes, yeah, that was another one.
That's right before the
yeah,
bridge.
That's like, can I take it back there too?
But it happens so fast. You're like, I think they might bleep like 2 of the little words in this for radio, but all of those things.
Yeah, like
that
slips.
line was
But
in,
they
was
fool
on the
you
radio.
though anyway, because it's like it just sounds like it's just like such happy music.
Yeah, it
where
was
you're
about
just
him
like,
being
oh.
a homeless squatter in a commune. I think it's San Francisco and doing meth.
Yeah, also it very much heavily like it references it references crystal meth. Also, the interesting thing about the song too is the do 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 is a play on Lou Reed's "Walk on the Wild Side." Do do do.
Yeah,
do.
I watched that
do,
video
do,
yesterday.
do, do, which is.
See, I didn't think we were talking about this album, and I still did a lot of research.
Well, this is the thing
'Cause
though.
I like this album.
Because like. I'm like listening to this album, and the first listen, I'm like, this album is horseshit bullshit. But then I'm like listening to it more, and I'm like trying to like really. And there's a lot of great content on this record. It's really not a horseshit record. It's really good.
You mentioned Oasis. Like, I think Oasis is good, but I think these songs they're just, for me, in a different league of wordplay and topics and cleverness and like melodic whatever. Because a lot of Oasis is like straight up like Beatles paint by numbers.
Yeah.
Musically. And this is like, I love the sound of this record. I love the layers of guitars because every track is like 4 overdubs of different guitar sounds, and like everything's like, it's like even the cleans sometimes are so cleaned up that they sound like hollow. Like Burning Man, it's like ding ding ding.
Oh, that's
So like when it's laid back, it's like sounds like a cheap $5 guitar, and then it hammers in with that overdrive distortion stuff.
Yeah.
Burning Man, great track on this record. One of the definite highlights of this record.
Yeah, it threw me for a loop because I was like, because I haven't really listened to this record in full anyway, you know. So I know the hits, whatever. But yeah, listening back to it, I was pretty surprised where I was like, oh, this is kind of heavy. Like this is okay. This isn't just like a radio rock 90s pop song. This is actually, you know, it's got some meat on it, you know. So
Also, I found this record like a lot of like the emo-y bands, your Jimmy Eat Worlds and all those kind of bands that came later. Sound a lot like this record. I know Jimmy Eat Worlds is pretty much of the same era, having I think their first release is 99 or 98. But it you know, it sounds a lot of like the later like Hot Topic-y like emo bands that were like really big. This record is.
I know the guy who co-produced this record, Eric Valentine. He was Smash Mouth's producer.
There you go.
somebody.
So all of their records.
Boom, boom, boom. Music news. Smash
please.
Mouth got a new singer, guys.
No.
Oh,
Yes, there was a big press release and everything.
How can they fill that
void.
bloated alcoholic void?
Yo, that.
Somebody.
He just drops the beer. He's
Oh
leaning.
my God! Next thing I know,
Breaking
Mark
news.
McGrath from Sugar Ray is going to be replaced
I know.
next. What's this world coming to?
Oh, I got more music news on that later.
Okay.
Oh, Smash
On
Mouth?
the, on the Mark McGrath front.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so the sound of this record is I love the sound of this record. It holds up. It doesn't sound dated. It sounds like this could come out today. And yeah, I actually wasn't into the album until the end of high school. Like I knew the radio singles, and then the girl I dated at the end of high school and into college was a huge fan of this because this was an album that like her parents would have in the car and play. So she was like a big fan of Motorcycle Drive-By, which is like the second to last track on the album. So I started getting into this in a deeper way when I was like 18, 19. And yeah, this is like the perfect record for the middle of April, spring, going to summer, windows down.
And it's like you know, like you said it. I mean, it was in her parents' car. You know what I mean? So it's such an accessible kind of music. You know what I mean? Like if you just want like pop rock radio hits, you get that. But there is some substance there too, so it can definitely span.
And I kind of like the track
generations, you know?
listing because it is like hit you over the head, kind of very melodic pop rock for the first 2/3, and then the last couple tracks are kind of like the come down off that, and they are like a lot more subtle and like kind of darker and less catchy and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like I mean, I could have used like a cut of like 2 songs, and then like would have been like high perfect status for me.
Right.
It sits a little long
It's
in
the
the
90s,
playtime.
though. Every 90s album was 15
Dude, that's what I
tracks.
fucking
Yeah, it's
said to Mike, dude.
57 minutes.
I said that the
long
same
and
way. I
33
was like,
seconds.
they felt like they needed to fucking ram 15 songs on it to justify the $19.99 price, but like, man, I
yeah,
disagree.
but it was also the era of CDs where you could fit 16 to 18 tracks on an
Yeah, because you
album.
I
could
hate
fit what 78 minutes on a CD or something.
Yeah,
like
I'm
that.
just-
I'm
Yeah,
not
so-
I'm not into that era of like album. It's just too much.
Yeah. So what did I say? 14 or 15 tracks. Like ultimately, it would be
Yeah, 14.
maybe a better album if it was 12.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
But I listened to it a few times this week, and I'll listen to it.
so
How's it gonna be?
it's
I'm
def-
telling you, one of the best songs
that's-
of the 90s.
that was one of my favorite
Straight
songs
up.
in there. But
Straight up.
I'm
The
definitely
toy piano.
I'm definitely gonna say "Burning Man" was my favorite track.
Burning Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that guitar sound I mean. It's like that cheap hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely dug that.
I love the opener too, man.
I definitely like how it made me like. Oh yeah, that like the whole. That's what I liked about the record is it's like you could really take it on 2 levels. You could take it on like it's a great pop record, and then underneath it, it's a record about losing a whole year of your life to drugs and alcohol abuse.
I like Narcolepsy, the second track. I mean, I love this
Yeah.
album. but
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Narcolepsy is like in this one like time, dun, 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 and then he holds a note and do it, and then it goes dun, 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 and now it's faster and like at a different feel. Yeah, I love this record, man.
Yeah.
This is like a not guilty pleasure for me.
yeah, it's a
Power pop. I love that. Wikipedia puts it alternative rock, post grunge, power pop because this is a power pop album.
It definitely is power poppy. It's got like a lot to do with like the way Weezer's first 2 albums were written.
That's why I told Mike the secret 3 best albums of the 90s: Third Eye Blind, self-titled, Weezer's first Blue album, and Foo Fighters' Color and the Shape. Because they're actually all 3 are closer to like the Cars and music of that new wave power pop era.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I'm excited to talk about that later too, with like the lyrical content of some of the other bands we're going to be
Yes.
talking about this good fine morning.
Yeah, that was a good
Yeah.
visit. 25th
Yeah.
anniversary, Third Eye Blind. Check
Yeah,
it out, man.
Let's take a quick break
I'm gonna
now.
take a quick break
We'll take
now.
take a quick
Oh,
break
car.
now. We'll take a quick break right now, and then we'll come back and we'll do the whole rundown of Luke's picks.
Can I give you my music news before I go?
Yeah, let's hear it. Mark McGrath, right?
Yeah, Mark McGrath. Check out this Rolling Stone article about private gigs where Mark McGrath is heavily quoted. It's in the new Rolling Stone, which is around here somewhere. But
It's right
anyway,
there. It's already on the futon.
it's all about private gigs and how these guys are getting like up to $500,000 to do private corporate rock gigs. And he was like, "It's great. It's really great. I get paid a bunch of money. It's great."
Every
And-
there's a
Yeah, right. It's like,
But check out the
someone's
article
paying $500,000 for
'cause
Sugar Ray.
it's really fascinating.
Sugar Ray had hits, man. They had like 4 or 5.
Dude,
not saying
Sugar
they
Ray
didn't
has
have it.
way more hits than you
Yeah.
even think
I'm not
there
saying
is.
that they didn't have hits. I'm just saying $500,000
Put
worth
your
of
arms
hits.
around me, baby. But check out the
I
article.
guess if you're having like a
It
like
really-
a tiki summer,
That's the soundtrack.
the corporate gala.
Well, the thing
That's
is,
classic rock now.
Ugh.
you know, the artists are getting paid a lot of money for this, and it's like, it's kind of weird because like it's not like it's almost putting like rock and roll not in the hands of the people anymore, and it's like a it's
Yeah.
getting to the point where you are almost never going to get to see your favorite artist unless you shell out a couple hundreds of dollars.
That's been an ongoing problem though. Anyway, with
But
like
this is
with
getting
like
worse.
Ticketmaster and stuff, with like the way that they
Well,
charge.
also
and-
check out the John Oliver did a piece on Ticketmaster like a week ago. So I think like those two combined things
Yeah.
are very interesting if you're into that kind of thing and get real
Yeah.
nerdy and granular on
It's kinda-
like ticket pricing and
It's
everything.
funny though how it was like, you have the big sort of record labels labels who are, in the earlier days, quote unquote, you like have these big bloated record labels just like fucking over these artists. And it's like no matter what, business finds a way to fuck over the artists. Like no matter what it is, like in all its pathways and different forms and all that. Because we were talking about it yesterday where like, and we disagreed to a certain extent of just how like, I think that the tide has turned, at least in the sense that like artists seem to be more in control of their music in the sense of like having the ability to like release things independently and kind of having more creative control over like what kind of sound they want to put out there because they have that. But you were kind of contrary to what I was saying, and I mean right in that way too, because like if you think about it though, the mainstream, like the big mainstream of music, it's still kind of like that, you know what I mean, in terms of like the record label kind of like being like, yeah, well, you should really try and do this, like you should really like wink, 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 unless you're like a SoundCloud rapper or something.
That's the whole.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
That's my view.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Who cares?
I talk about the chess moves of billionaires.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's the chess moves of billionaires. It's it's just it's weird.
Corporations.
It's a weird time.
Hey,
Yeah, it's weird.
So a last thing on the 25th anniversary and the idea that Third Eye Blind is classic rock now. The gap between like Elvis Presley's Hound Dog and let's say Led Zeppelin's fourth album, Zoso. That is a smaller gap between those two than now to the Third Eye Blind album record.
Wow.
Yeah, because if you think 56, 66, 76 is only
24 years, and then this.
Wow.
That's what I mean.
Yikes.
So we think of shit like Nirvana, Alanis Morissette, Soundgarden as like our music, but like that's like someone in the mid 80s being like, well, yeah, that old fogey music from 1948. Like that's like really what it's like.
That Cab Calloway.
Time, as Steve Miller said, time keeps on ticking, ticking, ticking.
Into the future.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back.
Now we're gonna get into our main segment.
Yes.
Which is going from our long, Tool, dense music episode. We asked Luke to pick out 3 of his favorite shorter albums. So Luke picked 3 punk albums from 1983, and we'll listen to all 3, and we're gonna talk about them.
The Replacements are from 83.
All 3 records were 83.
Were they?
I did the research.
I thought the
Violent Femmes is 83.
83. I thought the other two.
Replacements is 83. Minutemen, it says 2006, which I know
That's the reissue.
Is
It
that
was
82?
83.
Oh, I did pick them all in 83.
Nice.
Good for me.
Yeah, good for you.
I thought they were all 2 were off and 1 was different.
Great
But
job.
I did choose these 3 because they were all like under 35 minutes. And they are all interesting punk records. They're not all in the punk formula, loud, fast, gnarly. They are all different, very different textures. And I thought they were all incredibly influential records on some of the most famous bands that would come later. This is also like the lost era of alternative and underground music. It has like no, big press. You can't buy the T-shirts at Target, is what I'm really saying.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to talk about them. And they're all short, and I guess that makes them easier to listen to because they might be a bit more on the challenging side.
It made some of them easier to listen to.
On the challenging side of the listening spectrum.
I loved it.
But
I love this assignment.
Why don't you pick one to start off with?
Let's start off with probably the easiest one of the bunch, which I would imagine would be the Violent Femmes record. It's probably the one that people are most familiar with. This is their first album that was released. They are from Minneapolis. No.
Minneapolis.
They're from Minnesota, I believe. One of those M's. But
Michigan.
Montana.
Michigan.
I don't know where they're from. I was just putting an M name out. I know one was from
Looks like
Milwaukee, one was from
Michigan.
Minneapolis. I don't know where they're.
Milwaukee. That's
Milwaukee.
it.
Bark twice if you're in
Replacements.
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee
Milwaukee.
for the good earth.
They're from Milwaukee. This record was released on Slash Records as well, big LA independent record label. So this band is interesting because there's like no electric instruments on this record. Really, there's not a full drum
A
set
smattering.
on this album. The drummer plays like a snare cocktail type kit, almost like a bucket drummer type thing. So what I find most interesting about this band is they kind of take, I think we were saying before the mics were on, that they kind of take the personal, acoustic-y, heartfelt, on your sleeve, modern lovers approach, and then mix that with a healthy dose of free jazz and world music. And I feel like you get a great band that was influenced by the Ramones and Ornette Coleman and like say your Bob Dylan's of the world, all in one, and that's kind of what this record is. The big single that people know off this record is "Blister in the Sun." I think everybody's heard that song, and it wasn't really a big single, so that's another fascinating thing about this record.
Yeah.
Because it's an underground sleeper. This album was platinum by the 90s. This was released in 83. It was platinum by the 90s and only made an appearance on the charts at 179. So that's a really hard feat to do, actually, for an independent record.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely is like, I mean, so shout out to our man George Bruderman of the Feel Feelings podcast, but he does that like acoustic folk punk kind of thing, and I think this is sort of like the ground layer for that.
Yeah, it's definitely the grandfather of it.
Yeah, right, because I didn't even like it was, and it's funny too because this album was like a heavy spin in my household when I first got my turntable, because Jade has this. That's my copy, her copy, I should say. Sorry, and and I mean the opening track, obviously, it's the one I'm probably the most familiar with. But I didn't realize that, like this entire album is like pretty much all acoustic guitar stuff, and I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I think it definitely also paved the way for. I don't. Maybe it's a stretch. I don't know, guys. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you had that like the Lumineers, Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. You had like this sort of like folky kind of resurgence thing that happened in like 2000. But I'm saying like it's kind of that crusty folk punky kind of thing. I mean, obviously those bands that I had meant, like the Mumford and Sons and stuff like that, it is different, right? It's not, I wouldn't consider it in the same genre, but it's like hammering out on acoustic guitars, like popish kind of punkish kind of song, like acoustic with attitude kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say this is punk in the way that it's like it's very DIY, it's very lo-fi is not really the word, but it's rough around the edge. And it sounds like three guys maybe like traveling the country in a van and just like busking city to city with acoustic guitars, because like nothing is like locked into the grid like timing wise, and it's very loose, but the collective is all together. There's some call and response harmonies and it's very much, it sounds like kind of maybe the lead singer was like the main songwriter and the creative brain of it.
Correct.
But yeah, it sounds like if you took a punk band and you said go acoustic for the next 3 weeks traveling around the country.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So it was, because I expected, when Luke said they're punk albums, I expected like more what I think, which is like anarchist, like loud, messy, shitty, like quality, like, let's be real.
Yeah.
But this was like much more like easier to listen to. It's very, summery and all that kind of stuff.
It's definitely a good entry level album, I think.
And the acoustic
also,
thing was
like we were talking about, like how that Third Eye Blind record was influenced by like the Weezer songwriting. The Weezer songwriting was very heavily influenced by records like this record, because you have songs like was that Kiss Off, where he's naming all the pills that he's taking and for what reasons. 1, because she left me. 2, for my family. 3, for my headaches. All that. No Tomorrow. Like that great count up in the song, like you guys were saying before, is great, but it has all that like, my life is like awkward and miserable and high schooly and all that stuff in like a real open and a front way. And I feel like a lot of punk alternative people were like Well, I'll tell you why the government sucks, but I'm not going to tell you why my personal
feelings, yeah.
why my personal life is a mess. And this
Yeah.
record's like, I'll tell you why my personal life is a mess. And
Yeah.
I think that's a fascinating breakthrough in songwriting for that whole kind of movement.
Yeah.
And Luke mentioned a band that I really enjoy, which is the Modern Lovers, which was another mostly acoustic, like 4-piece proto-punk band from the mid-'70s. This reminded me of the Modern Lovers. It also kind of reminded me of like acoustic, kind of slightly sloppy covers of like Kinks songs.
Yep.
Because it had a lot of that
Well, it has great
Beatles
choruses.
harmonies at times, and like, yeah.
Like the bass would be like boom, 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 like keeping like the crawly melody, and like the please don't go, like please, please, please do not go. That's so Beatles.
And the way the guy sang reminded me of the guy from the Kinks.
yeah, very emotive and like
And the tone, the exact, like the voice sounded so similar.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then even like further, like Gnarls Barkley, who had the hit "Crazy," "Gone Daddy Gone" is on that record, which is a cover from this original Violent Femmes.
Just like xylophone and stuff.
Yeah, and I just think this record has like everything to do with like Weezer and all like the emo movement in a big way, because it's just lyrically it's so effacing of all of that stuff. And two, it's one of the most interesting sounding records of that era. It's very like college rocky.
Yeah.
It's very like intellectual, campus-y kind of thing. Like the drummer would wear like I think the drummer or the bass player would wear like the African garbs all the time and like these like crazy outfits, and I think it kind of had like a world music aspect to it, and saxophone-y, jazzy, xylophone. It's interesting. So it's a big palette.
Any favorite songs particularly stick out? I like that one that has the counting, the one.
Yeah, that was that's probably
Kiss Off.
that's probably my favorite one.
And
then-
Blister in the Sun. That's the
yeah.
that's a big one for a reason. It's
yeah. Yeah. So probably
I really like "Add It Up." I
Okay.
just love the "Add It Up." I'm gonna add it up. Also the great like "Why Can't I Get Just One Fuck? Why Can't I Get?" All that
Yeah.
stuff is
Yeah.
like it's really vulgar, but also like it's a nerd. It's that whole thing. It's really well done. Yeah, great. This is a great record.
Yeah. Here.
let's
Shall we?
number 2.
Number 2.
I'll let Mike. I'll let Mike intro.
Pun
intro this one.
intended.
The
soundtrack to Shitting Yourself in a bar.
Yeah. This is actually what was playing when Gigi Allen died on the sidewalk.
Yeah, right. This is not even as like nearly as
No, I
hardcore
know.
as that. This is like
No, I know.
Gigi Allen would
So
fucking make
what's
fun
the
of this
second
band.
record? we're
So
talking
the second
about?
record, again, also released in 1983, is the album Hootenanny by the band The Replacements. This was an album that I've always heard about The Replacements, but I never actually listened to them. And
Me too, and my life was better.
very contrary to what Jeff's opinion of this album is, I love this album. I loved it. It's sleazy. It's gross. It's like looking at like spit on a road. It's like it's gross, and I
Before
love it.
we move
Love it.
any more forward, this is not.
And it's not hardcore.
This
It's
is not the critical acclaimed Replacements record. That would be the next record. Let It Be. And the other one would probably be Pleased to Meet Me behind Mike's head right there.
to Meet Me.
So
Going
those
down.
are probably like the two like big giant like great Replacements records. This record though, we'll get into it, is the start off kickoff of all of that.
Yeah.
Greatness.
So I think the thing with this album is
It's their second album as well.
the
so.
second thing. Yeah. I don't know. I think the thing about this is like it just is what it is, and it's just this. It's this body of work that is just gross and gritty and grimy, and I'm sorry, I'm just a sucker for it. I loved it so much.
So this is a punk record as well, but musically this is like this is closer to like the standard rock and roll sound of that early
and I think
80s
that's why I
time.
liked it though, because I like the callbacks to the rock, the sort of classic rock and roll,
Because we're saying it's grimy and gross, but that's most because it's like
because these members are grimy.
yeah, the members are alcoholic assholes and
Yeah.
famously like would miss call times and be late to shows and be so sloppy at shows that they like would stop after 5 songs and
Or not play any one of their songs the entire set and play half covers that they like could half play.
and this band fronted by Paul Westerberg, and this band is from where? Minneapolis?
This band is from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they are on the famous Twin Tone record label out of that city.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, the 10 seconds into the first track, which I think is called Hootenanny, I was like, good God, this is going to be the longest half hour of my life. And but then I did do the research, and I looked that, like, specifically for only this first track, every member of the band played a different instrument. So, like, the drummer is playing lead guitar, and the rhythm guitar player is playing bass, and the singer is playing drums, and it straight up sounds like absolute dog shit. And I did not like this record. I would never listen to this record again. I do not like music like this. I actually like dirty, angry, messy, like aggressive punk music way more than I like just like, this is like rock and roll played by guys who can't really play their instruments to me. And it just sounds like they're drunk idiots and just like can barely get through their own songs, even though they have studio time and they can go back and edit things. Like, it's not for me. I don't like drunk people, though. So, like, I listen to this album, and 10 seconds in, I go, yeah, there's a bunch of drunk idiots. Fuck this album.
This is why I really enjoyed this record. Because
The yin and the yang here.
if this was the last record this band would have made, right, they just would have been a garage band that made a couple records, right?
Yeah.
But there's hints of like it's the self-sabotageness, it's all of that baked into it, which is what I think makes it great. Like the title cut, Hootenanny, is they're all switching instruments, and the first 2.5 minutes of this album is a piss take. It's not serious. It's not. It's not putting on any airs. It's just like, we're gonna have a good time, and then it hits you with like real songs in there. They're sloppy. I feel like the drunkenness of the Replacements being drunk on their records, I feel like I know it's going to be like, it's going to not sound great, but in a way, the artistic nature of a musician that is drunk is usually never really that picked up in their career, even though it happens to a lot of people, right? And so this band was like, I sound like that every night. I'm going to sound like it on the goddamn record, which you got to, I mean, you don't have to respect it, you don't have to like it, but I feel like it's a different form of the painting. You know what I mean? It's a different...
But we listened to like a live video, and the live video, I was like, I wish the record sounded like this, because that particular night, they were on top of their shit, and like they sound like they're a cohesive, like, on the beat. And
then in there, it lies the mystery of the Replacements. On some night, they were the best band that you ever would have saw in your entire life. And then on most nights, they were the worst band that ever existed. So they had it in you, but it's the do I want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that whole thing. Also, to be noted, the bass player on this record is only about 14 or 15 years old. So that's another pretty interesting fact. Of
later to go on to play with Guns N' Roses for about 15 years.
Yes. On
Tommy Stinson on Chinese Democracy.
On Nothing Good. On Nothing Good.
Ironic. 2 thumbs up. I bought the CD when it came out the day it came out.
Did you?
Yes.
What?
Monday morning. I think I came late to school just so I could go to Best Buy to get it as soon as they opened.
I need to pause this podcast right now. Are you telling me? Do you think Chinese Democracy is a better record than this record?
Yes. Oh my God.
Get out of
Shots
here.
fired. Shots fired.
Get out.
But I also think Chinese Democracy is better than both Use Your Illusion albums.
Whoa. Wow. GNR episode coming soon.
Apparently.
I get up around 7.
They only have one good album and one good EP. End of
Appetite, baby. Appetite for
but
Destruction.
yeah, so
which is what this band had, an appetite for
I
destruction.
The thing is, man, I rock and roll and all that stuff, but like, I don't know, the legend and the hero worship of people's bad behavior, that's one thing. But like straight up, I had heard the Replacements. I had never gone out of my way to listen to any of their music. I would listen to this for 35 minutes and I went, yeah, musically this is kind of dog shit, so fuck this. And that's just like, so I don't know, but that's me and that's my personal taste.
Yeah.
Because I just like, I felt like you could go harder into what they were doing. Be sloppier and messier, or clean it up and be closer to like Motley Crue and shit like that. But instead they were in this weird middle of like, because even some tracks I went, well, the singing on this is, you know, better than the last 5 tracks, or the bass playing on this song is actually decent, or the guitar playing on this is actually good. But like never on any song did all 4 members of the band ever click to be. And I gotta say, my favorite song on this album is the one Outlier that I'm sure you guys probably listened to this album and you went, well, this is gonna be Jeff's favorite song. And it's the one with like the drum machine and the keyboards.
I knew it.
Because I went, well, finally, at least a drum machine can fucking keep time. Like, you know, like for real. And that drum machine track, I thought, well, yeah, this is the best singing that Paul Westerberg's done on this album, like note for note as a singer.
But
instead of just being like, I'm a drum fucking asshole.
But therein,
I love it though.
but therein lies the right. Like
And that track is called what? Within Your Reach.
Yes.
With the flanged guitar and like. Yeah,
But that's why it's so good though, because like what other band of that era was putting out a song with a drum machine that was playing in that scene with the flanger guitar?
Yeah.
It sounds like a later Jeff the Brotherhood
But
tune.
it's the only track
Right,
that has
right.
any of those elements.
Right.
Which is why it's the one I liked.
But that's where this band would grow and be a better band. This is just the first underlinging of it. You know what I mean?
Because
They
that
had
song,
to
I
just
was like,
throw this
I-
album out.
That song came on, and I went, oh, good. This band could be like Depeche Mode instead of these fucking like a
Depeche Chode.
a bad Motley Crue cover band. Like,
Yeah, that's what I feel like this record is like, has all the debauchery of Motley Crue and all the
with
like
none of the production value, basically.
yeah, and all of the flair and like attitude of the Germs. So
Which again, like,
but again,
I can't
though,
listen to music where I go, yo, man, not for nothing, but you gotta fucking know how to play your instrument. Like, I'm not,
See,
and
I like
I'm not
it
into the.
hammed up.
I don't like virtuosic, like fucking noodling and knowing every scale and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like that stuff, I don't get into because that's like, yeah, you practice notes, but what emotion are you getting out? But then the other shit, the other end of the spectrum where they go, it doesn't matter what you know how to play, man. It's just getting those feelings out. It's like, yeah, but you can't even strum a fucking G chord. So what are we talking
but I don't know, man. I like it. I like
yeah,
it.
see, I'm
some
with-
people
I'm
spray
with-
paint on the side of the building, and some people shit hangs up in the Smithsonian. You know?
Yeah,
I'd wanna-
true.
I-
and
sometimes
some
I
people
wanna watch-
literally smear shit on the sidewalk.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm saying, dude. And it's all art, dude.
Yeah, see, that's my thing. I don't know. Maybe it's because I am like I have a romantic view of music, but there's just something for me that is just so compelling
it's
about
not-
an artist
No,
who
you
doesn't
have
give a shit.
You have a romantic view of the musician lifestyle, not the music. You
Yeah.
like the lead up into the music.
yeah.
Because this is not like
Listen,
this wasn't
I
a
don't-
band that
I'm-
practiced
I'm
and
a
got ready.
I'm a responsible homeowner, but don't get it twisted. Don't
See-
get it twisted.
Like for me too, it's not the junkie worship. It's
Yeah.
I would watch clean people bang on their instruments just as like
too.
ravenously.
Yeah, right.
Me too. I would too, but that's the thing. It's like the self-sabotage of these guys being so into their own addiction that stops them from actually being a good band to me. Because musically, I listen to this and I go, well, yeah, if you guys laid off the sauce, maybe this record would actually be worth listening to.
Yeah, but see, I'm a guy who loves, you know, like I love like the drunk Jim Morrison era of the Doors. You know what I mean? It's just that it's that gross, gritty, grimy, bloated, disgusting.
It's
like,
not right, but
It's not right. No. And I'm not. And I don't get it twisted.
You're
Like,
not
I'm
advocating for anything.
I am
It's just
not
taste.
advocating for
Yeah.
anything like that. Yeah, no, for sure. Like, you know, man, like, you know, drink water, not booze. Like, let's be real. Or Liquid Death if you want. Shout
If you
out.
want to,
we're trying to get that sponsorship.
Get some
Liquid Death.
acid
Murder
into
your
your guts.
thirst.
Also, shout out to Master P. Rap Snacks. Get ahead of us. But yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. I
It's,
just have this thing. I love it. I love
Yeah.
gross, gritty.
It's also like the it's like the drunk like authors. It's the same thing.
right
To me,
right,
it's
right.
like the same thing. Where
It's
you,
the Hunter S. Thompson. It's the
yeah,
you
it's
know.
the William Burroughs, right? Like the
the difference to me is I can read those guys' stuff. This, I was just like, I hope I never have to listen to this kind of music again.
The
The replacements.
That's my review.
We're gonna
two word review.
we're gonna make
Shit sandwich.
we're gonna make Jeff listen
long-
to "Pleased to Meet Me" later, and he'll be like, "Oh, I think I kind of like
The
that
longest 34 minutes of my life.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to your third pick,
one." Third pick.
if we may, California band.
Yep.
So we're moving out of the Midwest. We're going to the West Coast. We're going to the West Coast.
We're going to San Pedro to find the Minutemen, and we're going to talk about their second full-length album, What Makes a Man Start Fire, released on SST Records.
Also, side note, I did look it up, and the influence behind the name
yes, which
has
is
nothing to do with the fact that they have short songs.
I was going to fill you in on that. On
Well,
this
expand.
podcast.
Well, then go ahead. Hit us.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Luke's History
I
Corner.
really don't know what the Minutemen was, but I know it's a obscure political reference and has
Yeah.
nothing really to do with the shortness and brevity of the songs that they
Yeah,
played.
it was the Minutemen were like a colonial era American militia. That the reason why they called them the Minutemen was because they could be ready to fight at in a minute's notice, kind of thing, and that's where it actually came from. I thought it was because they just all killer no filler, like let's pump this shit out. But then upon further research,
University of Massachusetts mascot is the Minutemen.
oh, is it?
I did not know that.
It's near Boston.
Yeah.
That's where that was located.
Boston.
Sorry.
Boston.
It's near Harvard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time I have heard of the Minutemen and the members, and I have listened to a handful of songs, but I never sat down for a full album. This album is 19 songs. It's only 26 minutes long, and
Yeah, that was
I really like this. Out of the three, this was easily my favorite. I just like the stylistic choices. The band plays tight as a unit, as a three-piece. It's kind of like driving good drums. It's like lead bass playing, and then the guitar is either doing like kind of just filler chords. It's doing like some scratchy, like almost
Percussion-y.
yeah, like ticka 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 kind of things. But it's not like overdrive distortion crazy. It's actually
It's
like
mostly
clean
played
guitars. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
like the solos or the instrumental breaks on the guitar were really good and nuanced and
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, very interesting.
And
A lot of the guitar is atonal as well, kind of.
yeah,
like-
like it had like a Primus feel to me at times.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I thought when I listened to this. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, suddenly Primus makes sense.
And
it's
I like
83, so you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, like.
and I
this
like
is-
that the songs are like a minute to 2.5 minutes long.
Yeah.
And by 2.5 minutes, I mean like maybe 3 songs of the album were that long.
Right.
The rest are a minute and 15 seconds long.
Yeah.
And the
They're a little
lyric,
short.
the lyrical content ends up coming out like somewhat of a haiku.
Yeah.
And like that's what a lot of the music sounds like. It's like a haiku. It washes over you before you know what they said. It's over, and the next song is starting.
Yeah.
It also has a lot like a lot to borrow from like jazz fusion. It's
yeah.
like a jazz fusion haiku. Like that's and it's born out of like these guys grew up in the 70s. They watched Led Zeppelin and The Who become giant dinosaur bands, and they were talented musicians and they did know how to play their instruments incredibly well. So instead of playing these giant dinosaur-y jazz fusion things, they cut it down and made it intense and fast. And so it has all the fast in-your-faceness of a punk song, but only these three guys could probably play this music like this. That's why there's not another band that ever sounded like this and probably will never sound like this again.
Yeah.
It's the close personal bond and friendship of D. Boone, the singer, and Mike Watt
Mike Watt.
on bass.
and-
It's that connection that
What's
they
the
have.
drummer's name?
The
Something Hurley.
drummer's name is Hurley. I think it might be George Hurley. It is. George Hurley. They have like such a unique friendship, especially D. Boone and Mike Watt, that like you could tell that they're close.
Yeah, because most of these songs were written by Mike Watt, the bass player, but this album, all the lead vocals was D. Boone. Whereas other albums, it was kind of like 2/3 D. Boone on vocals and 1/3 Mike Watt on vocals.
Yeah.
I love the sound of this, and this had the classic feel of like every song was in a similar musical palette, like guitar tones and bass tones, but they were different enough to like not just sound like a whole half hour of just the same thing. And this was like in classic punk and like old school fashion, like literally recorded in one day, and then like 2 other days they went back and did vocal and guitar overdubs.
The band's Jam Econo. They were like
Yeah.
on the short. Did you ever listen to this album called Wire?
Yes, by the band Wire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It with the short songs.
Yeah.
That's like the closest thing
Sure, yeah.
I could ever like relate to this.
Yep.
But it's not really like that at all though, because that's kind of like straight and driving, where this is like all.
Yeah, and this wasn't like bop, 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 bop for a minute. This was actually like dun, 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 and it's like I said, the bass is like dun, 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 and then the guitar would be like
Yeah, it wasn't just that straight sort
Yeah.
of driving thing. There was so much
Yeah.
more, like even like in terms of the drumming, yeah, there was so much more space and
I also-
different sort of rhythmic things that you're kind of
some
not.
Latin stuff.
Yeah,
and
you're kind of not. You don't
some-
really
some
attribute
start
it
and
to
stop
punk.
times.
You know, you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing really punk about it is the energy that it's played with and the brevity of the songs. Other than that, it's really it's an out there record. And I think the lyrics too are more of like obviously the intro is Bob Dylan wrote propaganda songs, which is like they're fans of Bob Dylan. I think they're mostly stating that he wrote political songs to make you feel a certain way, and they were
Yeah.
about to do the same thing. So yeah, the high-mindedness of like the lyrics and how they
Yeah.
were common people singing about these themes,
Yeah.
also very important. It's just a out there record, and for the punk scene, it's a completely, it's an outlier, and it's one of those bands, one of those records that you get one thing and it goes outwards, which
Yeah.
is what I think the other 2 records do as well.
Yeah, because I listened to it and it like Jeff had said earlier, like it gives you these Primus vibes, because that bass too, like that bass is so up front, and that tone is it does sound like Les Claypool took that bass tone and was like, all right, let me just make this weirder, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's immediately when I listened to this front to back. I was like, oh, I see how we got to, I don't want to say new metal, but you know what I mean, like the lead up into the new metal.
I think you could
thing.
even say like this is how we got Tool. Like in some aspects, the bass playing is
Up front, it's the
it's
driver.
energetic. It's the driving. It's the tone of it as well is really out there, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Not so
Yeah.
much in that kind of thing, but
But I
it's-
think that speaks to like when we were talking about Tool, how Undertow's your favorite Tool album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's definitely this that leans more this way than
Yeah.
what Tool
Yeah,
ended
just
up doing.
and
but
very interesting. Like, not just the notes and tones that remind me of Primus, but like the fact that, like, because we all dabble in bass, but you can tell some of the lines are like he's thumbing out notes while also pulling and doing some harmonized stuff at times. It's not slappy, but it like jumps around, or it's like very like angular and strange.
Yeah.
But it still is like it makes sense in the song.
it's a very mathematical. It's like almost it's like played like mathy.
and did he
Yeah,
play? Did he
but-
play a precision bass? I think
don't
that's.
It's a Fender P bass, I think.
I was gonna say,
And
because
he-
that's
he's a
kind
Fender
of that's
guy.
like the punk rock bass is the Fender P bass.
Yeah.
You know. But even still, like, even when you, like, all right, maybe I'm talking about our favorite band on the podcast, but, like, even when you listen to Green Day,
We haven't shit on
Turn the
Green
ca-
Day
turn the
on this
camera off.
podcast in like
but,
a year.
But what
It's
I'm
been
saying
a long
is
time.
that, you know, that when you hear that bass line, that's like do 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 do.
Oh, yeah, that's born- that's Mike- that- yeah.
Or the No FX guy, Fat Mike.
Fat Mike, yeah,
that's like
all born out of
he.
this bass
But
sound.
and this band is like, just like Primus is like kind of metally, kind of alt, but also in this just like strange carnival-y like art rock thing. This
Yeah.
is much more like art rock, but they're minute and a half punk energy DIY songs. So, but this is like if all the songs in this album were stretched into 2.5 minutes, you would be like, this band is closer to like Talking Heads, art rock.
Yeah, see, that's when I listened to
But
it.
instead,
I
it's
thought,
like it just hits you and it's done in a minute, and then it goes on, and you're like, I haven't even processed that. thing
yeah,
yet.
right. And it showed that it's possible to just do a minute and a half long song. You know what I mean? You kind of saw a resurgence of that. It's completely different music, right? But like in the early, like the mid to late 2000s, you had a lot of metal bands who were coming out, and they were like super, super heavy, but super fast songs. You know, you'd have like a 30-second song. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. I think the Minutemen were that band that's just like, hey, you can do a song that's like a minute long.
Well,
Like, and it's okay.
It'd be a full thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, and it's okay. Yeah, it's like a complete idea. It's
Yeah,
just a
because
short
these are not
complete
these
idea.
are full songs. They aren't like sketches. These are like cool. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the why I really chose these 3 records is because they're all in the punk idiom, but they're not. None of these are punk records.
No,
and
not
so
as punk as we understand it.
right, and so that's why I wanted to choose these and really talk about them because the Minutemen were rejecting punk's original formality in the fact that they played their instruments incredibly well. They were faster, they were better, they wrote in a different style. It's more jazz influenced. We have the Replacements where they're coming out and being very hard in their sleeve, writing about their emotions. Like the first album is called Sorry Ma, I Forgot to Take Out the Trash. Like it's that vibe. It's being a youth and kid. And then even the Violent Femmes being of the folk idiom and cow punk vibe of bringing in country. Yeah. Country and folk and world music and being
Master
able
impersonator.
to bring punk
Impressionist,
into
sorry.
that light too, though. So it's
Yeah.
like that's why I like it because punk to me is boring. Like punk in the
like 1977 to 1980.
Yeah,
what
there's-
we think of is
because after the original wave, it just it's derivative. It's very very derivative music.
Yeah, it's like we get it. You hate you hate politics,
Right,
Can
it's
we just
only
move
so
on
much,
now?
of that. So these bands take that art form and birth out of it and move it in crazy fun directions. And these, especially that Violent Femmes record, is like one of my favorite childhood records. So it's a good musical front if you want to explore outwards from the original.
Yeah.
All the bands that everybody knows about.
Yeah, because I would say my favorite punk band, and it is like the one, but that's the Clash. And I like them though because it's like they're punk rock, but it's really like they're a band that did every style, and it was like more influenced by like the sounds of every music in the world rather than just like 3 chords, fast, angry, like.
Yeah.
Well, what the Clash had figured out, which I think their other peers were so late and never figured out, was that the punkness of punk was that you took the root of that feeling and they could bring it into the reggae and see that there was punk in reggae.
Yeah.
They could bring it into, like this beat and that beat. Sorry, a big cat just crawled by that window and caught my whole. Yeah, I was like, I don't have a cat. So anyway, sorry.
Cat.
Not
But
yet. Now.
Cats just move into Luke's house.
cat
man, dude.
Oh my god, what were you? I was completely lost my whole train. I'm so sorry.
You said
That's
that
okay.
the thing that the Clash adopted early was that
Well,
you could make other styles of music punk, or
yeah.
find the
Yeah,
punk
and
in those
that's what
kinds.
these bands did as well, and that's why the Clash were so successful. That's why
Yeah.
they had giant singles later, and the other bands faded out. They kept evolving and kept
Yeah.
changing, and
Well,
that's
it's the
what you.
idea. I think that punk is an attitude. It's not necessarily
the music.
the
Form.
music. And I
Yeah.
think like everything else, you get like your purists who are like, well, this is the format of what this genre is, and you have to stick to the format. But it's like, no, because it's just an attitude, man. Like rock and roll's an attitude, punk's an attitude. It's
It's the
it's a
constant,
worldview and
It's
and
the
a
building
mood.
off of what came before it and to make something better
Yeah.
later.
What
So,
are your 3 favorite punk bands?
The Ramones is my favorite punk band, hands down.
Yeah, same here.
I guess like well, it'd probably be the Ramones. The Bad Brains is probably my
Okay.
second, and
Oh, yeah.
then I mean like the Misfits probably my third favorite punk band.
Okay.
Same list.
I
list.
would say the Clash, Ramones, and honestly, after even just listening to this one record, I love the Minutemen.
Yeah, the Minutemen.
Like this was one of the few albums that I've been introduced to in the past month that I was like, oh shit, I might need to go back. I think the best way for me to listen to that album would be like start track 1, put it on repeat, listen to it like 2 or 3 times in a row, then do the same thing for each track so I can like absorb what each song's about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I almost did that vibe with the I listened to it backwards up the Third Eye Blind.
Right.
But yeah,
Right
Good
on.
picks. 1983 punk picks with Luke.
Yeah. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All that good stuff. You find us on Instagram, YouTube. We have a Facebook.
I don't know why you're looking at me, asking me. I don't know.
As I don't have a Facebook anymore.
So what? So who's doing our Facebook page?
I don't know. I thought I signed you guys up as admins.
Oh no!
Do you want to do social
Reverend
media
Luke.
work? Do you want
Yeah.
no money? We've made $9 in the past 2 years. If you're
12.
excited,
We've made $12 in the past 2 years.
Do you want $1.50 of that $12?
We buy donuts.
yeah,
We'll buy you donuts and a
dude,
coffee.
We'll donut.
No, we'll buy you a donut.
And a coffee made in Luke's coffee pot, which we can only describe as
Flavored.
flavored.
Dude,
right?
I clean-
seasoned like
Bro,
a,
I
like,
couldn't
like a
It's like an
pot.
old, it's like an
I
old cast
cleaned that
iron
shit
pan.
out today before
Yeah?
you guys got here.
Well,
Like, I cleaned it
Spit
today.
shine that thing.
I make a
Spit
lot of
shined.
coffee.
I still had some pulp in mine.
If you're an excited person and if you're looking to work in an exciting new field of podcasting for almost no money,
The Department of Labor reports that
if you want no money and want to hang out with us and edit videos and stuff, contact Get in the Garage
Yeah.
on this YouTube page.
yeah, on the YouTube page or hit us up on Instagram or anything like that. You know, we do have an email, getinthegaragepodcast@gmail.com. It's a long one, I know. I'm sorry. I should.
It's so many words. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's what
it is what it is.
I think what we really learned today is that good work isn't cheap, and cheap work isn't good.
Here, here.
Have a good week of school, everybody.
We'll see
Love
you
one
next
another.
time.
This has been a presentation from the Wasted Robot Network. For more information and links to other shows, please visit www.wastedrobotrecords.com/podcasts.